This video contains graphic descriptions of violence and disturbing content related to real-life events, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we're going deep into some creepy Craigslist encounters.
Ooh, this is going to be good.
I know, right? We asked you guys to send in your craziest stories.
And you did not disappoint.
Yeah, some of these are truly wild.
And a little scary, to be honest.
For sure. So if you're listening at night, you might want to turn on a light.
Or maybe grab a friend to listen with.
Exactly. But before we get too spooked, we should probably mention that we'll be talking about some sensitive topics today.
Yeah, things like violence and crime.
And we're not trying to sensationalize any of it.
No, of course not.
We just want to learn from these stories and hopefully help you guys stay safe out there in the digital world.
Right, because as much as we love the internet,
and we do,
it's important to remember that there are real risks involved.
Absolutely. So, with that said, let's dive into our first story.
Let's do it.
This one takes us back to 2011, and it involves a guy named Scott Davis who was looking for a job.
A job, huh? What kind of job?
Well, he came across this ad on Craigslist for a live-in farmhand position in Ohio.
Farm work.
Yeah, and it sounded pretty good, too, $300 a week, room and board.
Not bad, not bad.
But there was one thing that was a little strange about the ad.
Now, what's that?
It mentioned that over 100 other people had already applied.
100? Wow, that's a lot of competition.
Right. So you can imagine how excited Davis was when he got called in for an interview.
Yeah, I bet he thought he was really lucky.
He met with this guy who called himself Jack.
Jack, huh? Not very original.
Yeah, I know, right? But anyway, they met at a restaurant. Everything seemed normal.
Okay.
And then Jack said, hey, let's go check out the farm.
So they drove out to the farm?
Yep, but here's where things start to get a little creepy.
Uh-oh.
They're driving, deeper and deeper into the woods, like way off the main roads.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
No, not at all. And Davis is in the back seat, starting to get a really bad feeling. Because Jack is in the front seat, and there's this big, intimidating teenager driving.
Oh, no.
Jack introduces him as his nephew.
His nephew?
Right, in air quotes.
Something's definitely not right here.
Finally, they stop on this deserted stretch of road.
Like in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, pretty much. And Jack says, hey, let's walk down this hill and check out some equipment.
Equipment? What kind of equipment?
I don't know, farm equipment, I guess.
It all sounds very vague.
Very vague. And Davis is like, okay, sure. But inside, he's freaking out.
I wouldn't blame him.
So they start walking down this hill, Davis in front.
Leading the way.
And Jack and his nephew right behind him.
Like they're boxing him in.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden, Davis hears this click.
I click? Like what?
Like a gun being cocked.
Oh, my.
I know, right? And he turns around, and sure enough,
There's a gun pointed at him.
right at his head, and before he can even react,
He gets shot.
bam, right in the elbow.
Wow. Talk about a close call.
That's putting it mildly. But the crazy thing is,
What?
this is just the beginning of the story.
Wait, it gets worse.
Oh, yeah, buckle up.
All right, I'm ready.
So Davis, he's hit, he's bleeding, but adrenaline kicks in.
That fight or flight response.
Exactly. And he just takes off running into the woods with Jack and the nephew chasing after him, firing their guns.
Oh my God, like something out of a movie?
I know, right? Davis is just scrambling through the woods trying to dodge bullets.
Must have been terrifying.
Absolutely. He has no idea where he's going. He's just trying to survive.
So what happened? Did he make it out?
He did, but it took hours. He was crawling through the woods, injured, bleeding, lost.
Can you imagine?
It's like a nightmare. But eventually, he stumbled upon a house and got help.
Thank goodness.
I know, right? He was incredibly lucky to be alive.
That's for sure. But what about Jack and his nephew? What happened to them?
Well, get this. Jack turned out to be Richard Beasley, a serial killer who was using Craigslist to lure victims to their deaths.
A serial killer on Craigslist.
Yep. And the nephew was his accomplice, a 16-year-old kid named Brogan Rafferty.
Wow, that's just, I don't even know what to say.
It's chilling.
Right.
And it gets even worse. They had already killed 3 other men and buried their bodies in those same woods.
Oh my God, that's horrifying.
It is. And it just goes to show you never really know who you're dealing with online.
That's for sure. You have to be so careful.
Absolutely.
Hmm?
Now, let's switch gears a bit and talk about a different kind of Craigslist creep.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
This one takes us back to 2003, and it involves a guy named Brian Butcher who was looking for a roommate.
A roommate? What could go wrong with that?
You'd be surprised. So Boucher finds this guy named John Williams on Craigslist.
John Williams sounds harmless enough.
Right. And at first, everything seems fine.
Yeah.
They move in together, and Boucher, being the nice guy that he is, gives Williams the bedroom for extra privacy.
Maybe not the best idea in hindsight.
Yeah, maybe not. Because Williams starts acting really strangely.
Oh, how so?
He keeps to himself, spends almost all his time locked in his room, barely even acknowledges Boucher.
Wow, that's kind of creepy.
I know, right? And it gets creepier.
Really? How?
Well, months go by, and sometimes Williams would just disappear for days at a time.
Without a word.
Yep, just gone.
That's not a good sign.
Boucher's starting to get really freaked out, so he decides he's had enough.
What did he do?
He decides to pack up Williams' stuff and kick him out.
Makes sense.
But when he goes to get Williams' stuff,
He finds something.
oh yeah, he finds a whole lot of something.
Like what?
Well, first he finds this manila envelope stuffed with shredded credit card
A
offers.
card offers?
Yep, and they're all addressed to Boucher.
So Williams was stealing his mail.
Looks like it, but that's not all. He also finds a sheet of paper with the names and addresses of Boucher's entire family.
His entire family?
Yep, parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, the whole shebang. And it gets worse.
There's more.
Oh yeah, Boucher finds Williams' diary.
A diary. Juicy.
And at the end of one entry, he reads this chilling sentence.
Ooh, I love a good diary entry. What did it say?
It said, "I'm only now just starting to get over being afraid every time someone looks at me twice in the street, every time a cop looks at me thinking they know."
Whoa, that's creepy.
Right. And at that point, Boucher's like, okay, this is definitely not normal. So he does a little digging online.
Little Google search, I presume.
You know it. And guess what he finds out?
What?
His mysterious roommate, John Williams, is actually Dino Lauren Smith, a wanted jewel thief who had pulled off a $10 million diamond heist in San Francisco just months earlier.
No way. So he was living with a real-life criminal mastermind.
Pretty much. Thankfully, Smith was already in custody by then.
Thank goodness.
But can you imagine living with a guy like that and not even knowing it?
That's wild and a little scary.
For sure. It really makes you think twice about who you trust.
Absolutely. You can never be too careful, especially online.
Well said.
Yeah.
And speaking of being careful, our next story takes us into a situation where someone's instincts were screaming danger, but they went ahead anyway, and it led to a truly tragic outcome.
This is the one with the babysitter, right?
You got it. This is the story of Catherine Ann Olson.
Catherine Ann Olson. All right, tell me more.
So Catherine was a recent college graduate working part-time as a nanny.
Okay.
She was also pursuing an acting career. She was only 24 years old.
So young.
I know, right? Anyway, back in 2007, she comes across this ad on Craigslist.
For what?
It was for a babysitting job.
Babysitting. Seems harmless enough.
Right. But there was something about this ad that just didn't feel right to Catherine.
Really? Like what?
Well, for one thing, the person who posted the ad claimed to be a mother named Amy.
Amy?
But Catherine had this nagging feeling that something was off.
That gut feeling.
Exactly. But she needed the money, and she thought, well, maybe I'm just overthinking things.
It's easy to dismiss those feelings, especially when you're young.
Right. So, against her better judgment, she decides to go to the interview.
Where was it?
It was at this kind of rundown house in Minnesota.
Okay.
And when she gets there, she's met by a 19-year-old guy.
A 19-year-old guy, not Amy.
Nope, no Amy in sight.
Oh no, red flag.
Big time red flag. The guy's name was Michael John Anderson. And we don't know exactly what happened inside the house.
But something bad happened.
Something very bad. At some point, Catherine tried to run.
She tried to escape.
Yep, but Anderson shot her in the back.
He shot her.
Yeah, he dragged her body down the stairs and stuffed her in the trunk of his car.
Oh my God.
He abandoned the car a few blocks away, and then he tried to cover his tracks. He crushed Catherine's phone, wrapped it in a bloody towel, and tossed it in a public trash can.
He thought he was being clever.
He did, but he overlooked one crucial detail.
What was that?
The towel he used had his name written on it in black marker.
Seriously. That's ridiculous.
I know, right? Talk about sloppy. Needless to say,
They caught him.
yep, he was arrested and sentenced to life in prison without parole.
Good. He deserves it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But sadly, it doesn't bring Catherine back.
No, of course not. It's just a reminder that you can never be too careful.
Exactly. And sometimes, Even when you do everything right?
Things can still go wrong.
It's a scary thought.
It is. But I think it's important to talk about these things.
I agree. Awareness is key.
Right. The more we know about the potential dangers,
The better equipped we are to protect ourselves.
Exactly. Now, for our next story, we're diving into a world where online interactions intersect with sensitive transactions, leading to a tragic outcome. We're talking about the case of Jennifer Peppinger.
Jennifer Peppinger. Okay, tell me about her.
Jennifer was a 26-year-old woman working in Long Island.
All right.
And in March 2010, she connected with a client named Chad Johnson through Craigslist.
A client? What kind of client?
Well, Jennifer was a sex worker, and she advertised her services on Craigslist.
Okay, that's a risky business.
It is, especially when you're relying on online platforms to arrange meetings with strangers.
I can imagine.
So Jennifer and Chad agreed to meet in his car,
Okay.
but at some point during the encounter, things went wrong.
What happened?
Chad demanded his money back, but Jennifer refused.
Oh, no.
And that's when things turned violent.
What did he do?
He choked Jennifer to death.
Oh, my God, that's horrible.
It is. And then he buried her body in a shallow grave near the Long Island Expressway.
How awful. So did they catch him?
They did. The police investigation quickly identified Chad as the last person to see Jennifer alive.
And it turns out.
He had a history of violence, particularly against women.
Of course he did.
The sources actually describe him as a serial choker.
That's chilling.
It is. This case highlights the vulnerability of sex workers who rely on online platforms.
Yeah, it's a dangerous world.
It is, and it underscores the need for caution and awareness.
Absolutely. Always be mindful of your surroundings and trust your gut instincts.
Couldn't agree more. Now let's shift gears again and talk about a case that takes us into the truly disturbing realm of online child exploitation.
This is a tough one, but it's important to talk about.
I agree. It's a reality we can't ignore.
So who are we talking about this time?
This case involves a journalist named Timothy McDermott.
Timothy McDermott. Okay, what did he do?
Back in 2005, he responded to a Craigslist ad offering young girls.
Young girls. That's disgusting.
It is, and he wasn't even trying to hide his intentions. He explicitly stated that he wanted a white 14-year-old girl with a ponytail.
Oh my God, that's just sick.
I know, it makes your stomach churn.
So what happened?
He ended up in a chat room with an undercover FBI agent posing as a 13-year-old girl.
Oh, so they were onto him.
Yep, it was a sting operation.
Makes sense. These kinds of operations are so important.
They are. It's a way to catch these predators before they can actually harm anyone.
Exactly. So what happened with McDermott?
Well, after months of disturbing conversations, he arranged to meet the girl.
He actually tried to meet up with her.
He did, and he even offered to pay for sex.
That's just beyond messed up.
It is. But thankfully, the FBI was waiting for him.
They arrested him.
Yep, they arrested him on his way to the meeting.
Good. What happened to him?
He was sentenced to 6 years in prison.
6 years? That doesn't seem like enough.
I know, it's frustrating, but at least he was held accountable for his actions.
That's true. It's a reminder that law enforcement is out there working to protect us from these predators.
Absolutely. They're doing incredible work, often behind the scenes, to keep us safe.
Yeah, we should all be grateful for that.
For sure. Now, our next story takes us back to the complexities of vetting individuals, particularly those with mental health issues. This is the case of Diane Warwick.
Diane Warwick. Okay, fill me in.
Diane was a woman with a history of violence and mental illness.
Right.
Back in 1988, she was convicted of robbing a pharmacy.
Okay.
And then 9 years later, she stormed into a drug recovery program with 2 handguns.
2 handguns. What was she doing?
She was demanding prescription pills.
Oh, wow.
But they told her they didn't have any, so what did she do?
Right.
She took a counselor hostage and spent an hour shooting at the police.
Shooting at the police? This is intense.
It is. This woman had a serious history of violence.
So what happened?
She was eventually wounded and arrested, but the court found her not guilty by reason of insanity.
Not guilty by reason of insanity.
Wow. Yeah, she ended up spending 6 years in a mental hospital.
Okay.
Fast forward to 2007.
All right.
Diane answers a Craigslist ad to be a caregiver for a 70-year-old woman in California.
A caregiver.
Yep, the woman, Mary Jane Scanlon, was wheelchair-bound and needed help with daily tasks.
That seems like a risky situation given Diane's history.
It was a recipe for disaster.
So what happened?
Tragically, Diane stabbed Mary Jane to death.
She killed her.
Yes. She was later arrested and sentenced to 31 years to life in prison.
Wow, that's a long sentence.
It is, but it doesn't bring Mary Jane back.
No, of course not.
This case raises a lot of questions about how we vet individuals, especially those with mental health issues.
Yeah, it's a tough balance between compassion and safety.
Absolutely. We want to be understanding, but we also need to protect vulnerable people.
For sure. Now, for our next story, let's talk about the dangers of conducting transactions at home, especially when high-value items are involved.
This is the story of James Sanders.
You got it. James was a family man just trying to make some extra cash by selling a diamond ring on Craigslist.
Okay, what happened?
Well, he received a response to his ad from what appeared to be a young married couple.
A young couple.
Yep, and he invited them over to his home in Washington State to see the ring.
Oh, no, that doesn't sound good.
It wasn't. As soon as they were inside...
They revealed their true intention.
Exactly. The husband pulled out a gun and ordered everyone to the floor.
It was a robbery.
Yep, a home invasion.
Wow, those are terrifying.
They are. And in this case, it turned deadly.
Deadly. What happened?
Well, while the couple was tying up James, his wife, and their 2 sons.
2 sons. Oh, God.
I know 2 more armed accomplices burst into the house.
Oh, no, they were outnumbered.
They were.
Yeah.
And things escalated quickly.
I can imagine.
One of the intruders got rough with James's 14-year-old son, hitting him with his gun.
Oh, no, poor kid.
James, being the protective father that he was, broke free and lunged at the attacker.
He tried to protect his son.
He did, but he paid the ultimate price.
What happened?
He was shot 3 times.
Oh, my God.
He died in his wife's arms, right in front of his children.
That's just heartbreaking.
It is. A senseless tragedy.
And all because he was trying to sell a ring online.
It's a reminder that even seemingly simple transactions can turn deadly.
You never know who you're dealing with.
Absolutely. Always be cautious when inviting strangers into your home.
Especially for transactions involving valuable items.
Right. Meeting in a public place is always a safer option.
Agreed. Now, get ready for our next story, because this one takes us into the dark and twisted world of a couple who used Craigslist to lure a victim for a planned murder.
A planned murder on Craigslist.
Yep. This is the case of Miranda and Elite Barber.
Miranda and Elite Barber. Okay, tell me more.
Miranda, who was 18 at the time, posted a personal ad on Craigslist in 2013.
What kind of ad?
It was targeting men who hated their wives.
Hated their wives. That's specific.
It is. And she got a response from a 42-year-old man named Troy LaFerrara.
Troy LaFerrara. Okay, what happened next?
They arranged to meet.
For a date?
Well, that's what Troy thought, but Miranda and Elite had something else in mind.
Something sinister.
Very sinister. While Miranda waited for Troy, her husband Elite hid under a blanket in the backseat of their car.
He was hiding in the car.
Yep. And they had a prearranged signal.
A signal.
Yep. When Miranda said, "Did you see the stars tonight?"
Did you see the stars tonight? That's the signal.
Yep. That was Elite's cue to attack.
Oh my God, that's so creepy.
It is. So as soon as Troy got in the car, Elite jumped out and wrapped a cord around his neck.
He strangled him.
Yep. And Miranda joined in, stabbing Troy over 20 times.
Over 20 times. That's brutal.
It was a horrific attack.
So what happened after that?
They dumped his body in an alley, washed their car, and went out to dinner to celebrate.
They went out to dinner.
To celebrate.
Yep. They were completely remorseless.
That's just sick.
It is. They were both arrested the next day.
I'm glad they were caught.
Me too. And while in prison, Miranda confessed to killing at least 22 other people in multiple states.
22 other people? Are you serious?
That's what she claimed, but law enforcement hasn't been able to corroborate her story.
Wow. That's just, I don't even know what to say.
It's a truly bizarre and disturbing case.
It is. And it leads us to our final story, which involves a pregnant woman who was attacked and had her unborn baby cut from her womb after responding to a Craigslist ad for maternity clothes.
This one is truly horrifying.
It is. It's the story of Michelle Wilkins.
Michelle Wilkins. Okay, tell me what happened.
Back in March 2015, Michelle, who was 8 months pregnant, found an ad on Craigslist for maternity clothes.
Maternity clothes.
Yep. And she arranged to meet the seller, a woman named Dinah Lane, at her home in Colorado.
Dinah Lane. They chatted for a while, and then Lane led Michelle down to the basement to see the clothes.
The basement? That seems a little strange.
It does, doesn't it? And that's when things took a terrifying turn.
What happened?
Lane suddenly attacked Michelle, smashing a lava lamp over her head and pushing her onto a bed.
Oh my God, that's awful.
It was brutal. And then she used a shard of broken glass to cut Michelle's neck.
She cut her neck with broken glass.
Yep. Michelle was terrified, fighting for her life and the life of her unborn child.
I can't even imagine the terror.
She pleaded with Lane, saying, "I love you."
I love you. What did Lane say?
She said, "If you love me, you'll let me do this."
Oh my God, that's chilling.
And then she took a kitchen knife and cut Michelle's baby from her womb.
She cut the baby out of her.
Yep. Lane left Michelle bleeding in the basement, thinking she was dead, and took the baby upstairs.
That's just pure evil.
It is. But miraculously, Michelle regained consciousness and called 911.
Wow, she's a fighter.
She is. She was rushed to the hospital and, incredibly, survived.
Thank goodness. What about the baby?
Lane showed up at the same hospital, holding the baby and claiming she'd had a miscarriage.
She tried to pass the baby off as her own.
Yep. But the truth eventually came out, and Lane was arrested.
Good. What happened to her?
She was convicted and sentenced to 100 years in prison.
100 years? That's a long time.
It is, but frankly, it's not enough for what she did.
I agree. This case is it's beyond words.
It is. And it's a stark reminder that even in seemingly safe and familiar settings, like our own homes.
Danger can lurk online.
Absolutely. We have to be vigilant.
Always.
Well, I think that's a good place to pause for now.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have. But we're not done yet.
There's more.
Oh, yeah, we've got more creepy Craigslist encounters to unpack in part 2.
Bring it on. I'm ready for more.
All right, we'll be right back after a short break.
It's just unbelievable, the things people do.
I know, right? And it's a stark reminder that the anonymity of the internet can embolden people to do things they might never consider in face-to-face interactions.
Yeah, it's like a mask. It allows people to shed their inhibitions and act out their darkest fantasies.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder, how do we balance the convenience of online platforms with the need for safety and vigilance in the digital age?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's a constant negotiation between embracing the benefits of technology while acknowledging and mitigating the inherent risks.
Yeah, for sure. I think these stories really highlight the importance of trusting your gut instincts.
Absolutely. If something feels off about an online interaction, it's probably best to err on the side of caution.
Right. Sometimes our intuition picks up on subtle cues and inconsistencies that our conscious mind might overlook.
Exactly. It's crucial to listen to that inner voice and prioritize personal safety above all else.
And it's also a good reminder to be extra careful when conducting transactions online, especially if you're meeting someone in person.
For sure. Meeting in a public place, involving a third party, and doing your research beforehand can all help minimize the risks.
Right. Those are all excellent safety tips.
It's also crucial to be aware of the potential for scams and fraud, and to be cautious about sharing personal information online. Remember, once something is out there on the internet, it can be difficult to control its spread.
Absolutely. And if you're ever in doubt, it's always best to consult with law enforcement or a trusted security expert.
Couldn't agree more. It's better to be safe than sorry.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, and it's definitely been a sobering look at the darker side of online interactions.
It's important to remember that while these stories are certainly disturbing, they represent a very small fraction of the countless interactions that occur on Craigslist and other online platforms every day.
That's a good point.
The vast majority of people using these platforms are doing so for legitimate reasons.
Right. But it's still important to be aware of the potential risks and to take steps to protect ourselves.
Absolutely. It's like wearing a seatbelt.
Yeah. You might not need it most of the time, but when you do, it can be a lifesaver.
Yeah. Exactly. Knowledge is power. And by understanding the potential dangers, we can make informed choices and navigate the digital world more safely.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
I agree. It's been a fascinating, albeit chilling, exploration of the darker side of Craigslist.
But before we go, I'd like to leave our listeners with a final thought.
Okay, shoot.
We've seen how online platforms can be used for both good and bad.
Right. They can connect us with people and opportunities we might never have found otherwise.
Exactly.
But they can also expose us to risks we might not be fully aware of.
Right. So I want to ask you, dear listener, how do you balance the convenience of online platforms with the need for safety and vigilance?
It's a question we all need to grapple with as we navigate this increasingly digital world. There's no easy answer, but being informed, aware, and proactive is a good place to start.
If you have any thoughts or similar stories you'd like to share, we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. We're all ears.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And until next time, stay safe out there, both online and offline.
Stay safe, everyone. It really makes you think.
It does. It does. It's a reminder that even in seemingly safe and familiar settings like our own homes, we're not immune to the dangers that can lurk online.
No, not at all. It's like those old horror movies where the call is coming from inside the house.
Exactly. You think you're safe, but the threat is closer than you realize.
Right. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from these Craigslist stories.
What's that?
That sense of false security. We often let our guard down when we're online. We assume that we're protected by the anonymity of the internet.
Right, we think we're just interacting with usernames and avatars.
Exactly. But we forget that behind those digital facades are real people with real motivations, and sometimes those motivations are far from benign.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes these stories so unsettling.
Yeah, it's that clash between the mundane and the macabre. You're scrolling through Craigslist looking for a used couch or a babysitter.
Right, everyday stuff.
Exactly. And then, bam, you stumble upon something that just sends shivers down your spine.
It's a reminder that the line between the ordinary and the extraordinary can be very thin.
Very thin indeed. And sometimes it's invisible until it's too late.
Well said. So, what can we do to protect ourselves? Is Craigslist inherently dangerous?
I wouldn't say it's inherently dangerous, no more so than any other online platform, I suppose.
Okay.
But it's important to be aware of the risks, to be vigilant, to use common sense.
Right, like meeting in public places.
Exactly. Don't invite strangers into your home unless you're absolutely sure you can trust them. And even then, it's always good to have a backup plan just in case.
A backup plan, like what?
Like having a friend or family member know where you're going, who you're meeting.
Right, just in case something goes wrong.
Exactly. It's all about minimizing the risk.
And trusting your gut.
Always trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is.
Well said. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, and it's certainly been a chilling look at the darker side of Craigslist.
It has, but I think it's been a valuable conversation.
I agree. And hopefully it's helped our listeners stay safe out there.
That's the goal.
Absolutely. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Sounds good.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of creepy Craigslist encounters.
It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, stay safe out there, both online and offline.
Stay safe, everyone.